The message arrived not as a crackle of radio waves or a burst of data, but as a whisper in the quantum foam, a perfectly structured thought that bloomed in the minds of every human in the Sol system simultaneously. It was elegant, resonant, and utterly terrifying in its casual display of power. It spoke of the Zephyrian ascendancy, of a galactic council that had observed humanity's fledgling steps into the cosmos, and of an invitation. One vessel, it specified, would be granted passage to Zephyrus Prime, the heart of a civilization that measured its age in millennia. For Captain Sarah Chen, the message felt less like an invitation and more like a summons. She stood on the bridge of the United Nations diplomatic vessel Harmony, a ship whose name now felt like a naive prayer. The star map before her was a familiar blanket of charted transits and colonial outposts. Now a single, impossibly distant point of light pulsed with an authority that dwarfed everything humanity had ever achieved. They sent the coordinates as a psychic impression synced to a pulsar's frequency, Commander Evans said, his voice a low thrum of awe and anxiety. He ran a hand through his graying hair. The mathematics behind it, Sarah, it's like trying to describe a symphony to a man born deaf. We can see the result, but the method is pure magic. Is just technology we don't understand yet, Ben, Sarah replied, though the words felt hollow. She was a product of the outer colonies, born on a world where the air still had a metallic bite, and survival was a daily negotiation with a hostile biosphere. She was practical, grounded, and had seen the worst of humanity. Now she was supposed to represent the best of it. What's the crew's status? Excited, terrified. A few of the junior ensigns have started a betting pool on what the Zephyrians look like. Current favorite is shimmering energy beings. I've got 10 credits on inscrutable crystalline geometries. Sarah allowed a small smile. I'll take impossibly tall, thin humanoids who look disappointed in us. It feels more likely. The journey took 3 months. A single, silent transit through a corridor of folded space opened for them by their unseen hosts. For the crew of the Harmony, it was a period of intense preparation. They drilled diplomatic protocols, studied theoretical xenobiology, and practiced meditation techniques to calm their minds, just in case the Zephyrians were telepathic. Sarah spent her time in the ship's gravity gym, pushing her body to its limits. It was how she thought best, the rhythmic strain and burn a familiar anchor in a sea of unknowns. She was strong, a fact she usually downplayed. On the frontier, strength was a tool. In diplomacy, it could be seen as a threat. When they arrived, the word city felt insultingly inadequate. They didn't just build on their world, they had composed it. Crystalline spires pierced a sky of soft lavender, connected by bridges of solid light that pulsed with a gentle rhythm. Vehicles like captured comets flowed along invisible pathways, their passage silent save for a melodic chime that echoed through the impossibly clean air. The Harmony, a marvel of human engineering, looked like a crude iron ingot next to a master-cut diamond. Their host, Ambassador Thulnara, fit Sarah's prediction with unnerving accuracy. She was nearly 9 feet tall, with a body so slender it seemed a strong breeze might snap her. Her skin had the iridescence of mother-of-pearl, and her large, liquid black eyes held a placid depth that felt ancient. She moved with a slow, deliberate grace, her long, four-fingered hands gesturing as she spoke, her voice a series of soft, fluting notes that the universal translator rendered into perfect, cultured English. "Welcome, Captain Chen," Thulnara intoned, her head tilting in a gesture of polite curiosity. "We are pleased that your people have accepted our overture. It has been many cycles since a new species has shown the potential for galactic discourse." The subtext was clear. "Try not to disappoint us." "We are honored, Ambassador," Sarah said, keeping her voice even, her posture open and non-threatening as she'd been trained. Humanity has dreamed of this day for centuries. The tour that followed was a masterclass in overwhelming a developing species. They were guided through art galleries, where sculptures shifted and reformed based on the observer's emotional state. They saw energy being drawn from the planet's molten core through conduits that seemed woven from spacetime itself. They visited the archives of being, a vast library where the memories and knowledge of trillions of Zephyrians were stored in living crystals, accessible through simple thought. The Zephyrians, Sarah quickly realized, were a civilization that had conquered the physical universe. They had eliminated disease, hunger, and conflict. Their entire existence was dedicated to intellectual and aesthetic pursuits. Their bodies were frail vessels for brilliant minds, a biological afterthought in a world of effortless technological mastery. Our greatest societal achievement was the final decoupling of intellect from instinct, Dulnara explained as they glided along a light path overlooking a serene communal contemplation garden. We have transcended the base urges that drive lesser-developed life. The predator-prey dynamic, the struggle for resources, these are concepts our children study as ancient history, like a myth from a forgotten age. Worthy goal, Evans murmured, clearly impressed. Sarah remained silent. She thought of Earth's history, a relentless, blood-soaked saga of evolution and extinction, of survival of the fittest. Humanity hadn't transcended instinct. They had honed it, wrapped it in a neocortex, and aimed it at the stars. Looking at the graceful, fragile Zephyrians, she felt a strange, protective pity. They were magnificent, but they were glass. The final stop on the tour was the one that filled Sarah with a quiet dread. The Panopticon, a maximum-security biocontainment facility. It was a stark, brutalist structure of black, non-reflective material that seemed to drink the light around it, a stark contrast to the shimmering city. "Why do you keep dangerous creatures, Ambassador?" Sarah asked as they entered the sterile, cold interior. "It seems contradictory to your philosophy." "Necessary contradiction," Dulnara replied, her iridescent skin seeming to dim slightly in the harsh lighting. "The galaxy is not as tranquil as our world. There are forces of pure, destructive biology. To understand them is to understand the chaos we have risen above. We study them to ensure they can never threaten the galactic order. It is our burden as the eldest stewards." They walked past row after row of containment fields. Behind shimmering walls of energy, creatures that defied biological sanity writhed and hissed. There were silicon-based life forms that consumed rock, swarms of psionic insects that could drive a person mad with a whisper, and gas giants that had evolved a form of predatory sentience. Each of these creatures is the apex predator of its homeworld, Dulnara explained, a touch of pride in her voice. Contained here harmlessly by Zephyrian science. Then, they arrived at the final enclosure. It was set apart from the others, surrounded by a dozen concentric rings of shimmering energy, each one humming with unimaginable power. The air grew perceptibly colder, and an oppressive silence fell over the group. On a large placard, a single designation was written in the flowing Zephyrian script, followed by the Galactic Standard Translation. Warning: Biocontainment Unit 734 Subject. Void Stalker Origin. Cathar Nebula, Rogue Planet Designation X9 Threat Level, Extinction. There was nothing visible inside the field, only a profound and unsettling darkness, a patch of reality that seemed to have been cut out of existence. "The Void Stalker," Evans breathed, reading the data slate his aide handed him. "My God, it's a legend. They said it single-handedly destroyed the Cathar listening post at Cersei's Vale, ripped a destroyer-class warship in half. It's a myth used to scare naughty Cathar children." "It is no myth," Dulnara said gravely. "It is the perfect killing machine. It does not hunt for sustenance, but for the sheer act of annihilation. It moves through a form of localized quantum tunneling, making it impossible to track. Its chitinous hide is composed of a carbon lattice so dense that most energy weapons simply disperse across its surface. It feels no pain, no fear. It is the universe's answer to the question of life, a walking, screaming plague of death. Capturing it was our greatest and most terrible achievement." If on cue, a flicker of movement appeared in the dark. It was not a full reveal, just a suggestion of form, a curved, serrated limb, an eye that glowed like a dying ember, then nothing. A deep, subsonic hum vibrated through the deck plates, a thrum of pure malevolence that made Sarah's teeth ache. Her hand instinctively went to the sidearm she wasn't wearing, a ghost of emotion from a lifetime of readiness. Dulnara gestured to a nearby console. "We will demonstrate the integrity of the containment systems. The outer field will be momentarily fluxed to simulate a power surge. Observe how the secondary and tertiary systems instantly compensate." Zephyrian technician, his slender fingers dancing over a holographic interface, initiated the sequence. The outermost energy ring wavered, its hum changing pitch. And then everything went wrong. It started with a high-frequency screech from the power conduits overhead. A blue spark, tiny and insignificant, leaped from one conduit to another. A cascading resonance began, the screech building into a deafening roar. The lights flickered, died, and came back on, bathing the corridor in the stark, crimson glow of emergency lighting. Alarms blared, a discordant symphony of panic. Vilnara's voice was sharp, losing its fluting quality for the first time. Unforeseen harmonic feedback loop. The technician shrieked, his composure shattering. The diagnostic surge. It created a resonant frequency with the primary power grid. All systems are sentient stars, they are all failing. The containment rings around the Void Stalker's enclosure began to collapse, one by one, like dying embers. Foom. 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 Each failure was a hammer blow of sound, echoing the sudden, frantic pounding of Sarah's heart. The Zephyrian guards, armed with elegant-looking energy rifles, took up positions, their faces masks of disciplined terror. They had trained for this in simulations, but the reality was unmaking them. Their disciplined ranks wavered. "Reroute auxiliary power," Vilnara commanded, her voice trembling. "We can't. The primary grid is in overload. It's shunting power away from containment." With a final, deafening crack, the last energy field dissolved into nothing. For a single, eternal second, there was only silence, broken by the frantic, panicked breathing of the Zephyrians. The darkness in the enclosure remained. Then it moved. It unfolded itself from the shadows like a nightmare made flesh. It was 10 feet tall, a bipedal horror of glistening black chitin, serrated blades, and unnatural angles. It had no discernible face, only a cluster of glowing red photoreceptors above a maw that opened like a camera's aperture, lined with needle-like teeth. It didn't roar. It emitted a silent scream, a wave of pure psychic hatred that slammed into everyone in the corridor, making them want to claw their own eyes out. One of the Zephyrian guards, a young acolyte whose iridescent skin had gone a dull, terrified gray, raised his rifle and fired. A lance of pure white energy struck the creature's chest. It didn't recoil. The energy simply spread across its carapace in a web of harmless light before dissipating. The Void Stalker moved. It wasn't a run or a leap. It was a spatial distortion. One moment it was 50 feet away, the next it was upon the guard. A long, scythe-like arm blurred. The guard simply came apart, his body bisected in a spray of pearlescent mist and violet blood. The energy rifle clattered to the floor. Panic, absolute and primal, erupted. The Zephyrians, a race that had forgotten fear, rediscovered it with agonizing speed. They scattered, their graceful movements turning into a clumsy, terrified scramble. Their intellect, their culture, their technology, it was all useless. They were prey. Commander Evans grabbed Sarah's arm. "Captain, we have to go now." But Sarah wasn't moving. She was watching the creature. Her mind, honed by years of combat command and frontier survival, was not screaming. It was calculating. The creature was fast, impossibly so. Its defenses were absolute against their technology, but it was still a physical being. It had mass. It had to obey some laws of physics. The stalker turned its attention to Vilnara, who was frozen in place, her ancient mind unable to process the sheer, brutal reality of the violence before her. The creature raised its other bladed arm for the killing blow. Something inside Sarah Chen snapped. Or perhaps something finally clicked into place. The diplomat, the captain, the representative of humanity, vanished. All that was left was the apex predator from a planet of killers, a creature whose entire evolutionary history was written in claw and tooth and blood. "Get her out of there," she yelled at Evans, not as a command, but as a visceral roar. She didn't run at the Void Stalker. She charged, her boots pounding against the deck plates. The motion was so alien, so aggressive in this place of serene grace, that it momentarily drew the stalker's attention. Its cluster of red eyes swiveled to focus on her. Sarah ducked under its sweeping claw, the wind from the passage ruffling her hair. The monomolecular edge missed her by an inch. She didn't have a weapon. Her uniform was ceremonial. Her hands were empty. The creature's second arm lanced down, not a slash but a piercing strike aimed at her chest. She twisted, using the stalker's own momentum. Instead of trying to block the blow, she guided it. her hand slapping against the chitinous forearm, deflecting it just enough for the blade to slam into the deck, sending up a shower of sparks and metal shards. For a fraction of a second, its arm was embedded in the floor. It was an opening. Sarah drove her shoulder into the joint where the arm met the torso. It was like hitting a solid wall, and a lance of pain shot through her, but the creature grunted, a wet, guttural sound, and staggered. No one had ever been close enough to touch it and live. It ripped its arm free from the floor and swung around, its entire body a spinning vortex of blades. Sarah dropped, sliding on the slick, blood-covered floor. She came up inside its reach, too close for its long limbs to be effective. She saw it then. Underneath the creature's main torso, near the junction of its legs, was a series of pulsating gill-like slits, rhythmically venting a plume of green, vaporous gas. Its respiratory system. The stalker tried to back away to bring its claws to bear, but she was a limpet, clinging to it. It slammed her against a wall, and the air rushed from her lungs. Stars exploded behind her eyes. Her ribs screamed in protest, but she held on. Adrenaline, pure and fiery, flooded her system. The pain became a distant hum. Her world narrowed to those breathing slits. She jammed the fingers of her right hand into the nearest one. The creature's silent, psychic scream became an audible, high-pitched shriek of agony. The flesh inside the slit was soft, yielding. It thrashed wildly, trying to dislodge her, but her grip was iron. She felt cartilage and membranes tear under her fingers. Foul-smelling ichor gushed over her hand. It raised one of its massive legs to stomp her into paste. As the limb came down, she braced herself, and with a final, desperate surge of strength, she pulled. She tore a handful of its internal organs free. A great, shuddering convulsion went through the void stalker. Its thrashing became wilder, more uncoordinated. It smashed her against the wall again, and she felt her left arm snap at the forearm, the bone grating with a sickening crunch. But she didn't let go. With her one good arm, she reached for the jagged, broken edge of the deck plate where the stalker's claw had struck. Her fingers closed around a shard of razor-sharp metal. The creature reared back. Its cluster of eyes focused on her with pure, unadulterated shock. For the first time in its existence, it was feeling something other than predatory rage. It was feeling damage. It opened its maw to bite, revealing a gullet lined with spiraling teeth. Sarah didn't hesitate. She drove the metal shard upward with all her remaining strength, aiming for the soft tissue at the back of its throat. She pushed. The metal sank deep. The void stalker went rigid. A low, gurgling sound rattled from its chest. Its glowing red eyes flickered once, twice, and then dimmed into blackness. The immense body, a monument to universal lethality, swayed for a moment. Then, with a ground-shaking crash, it collapsed, its head landing inches from Sarah's feet. Silence. The alarms had stopped. The emergency lights cast a hellish red glow on the scene. The air was thick with the smell of ozone, violet alien blood, and the creature's foul green ichor. Sarah Chen stood over the corpse of the most dangerous predator in the known galaxy. Her uniform was shredded and stained. Her left arm hung at an unnatural angle. Blood trickled from a cut on her forehead, tracing a path through the grime and alien gore on her face. Her chest heaved with ragged, painful breaths. She looked up. Every Zephyrian, Thulnara, her aides, the surviving guards, was staring at her. Commander Evans and the human delegation stood frozen, their mouths agape. No one was looking at the dead monster. Everyone was looking at the living one. Their expressions were not of gratitude or relief. They were of a profound, soul-shaking terror far deeper than anything the Void Stalker had inspired. The Stalker was a known quantity, a force of nature they could catalog and contain. This was something else. This was a being from a supposedly civilized species, a diplomat who had just torn apart a biological god of death with her bare hands. They looked at her delicate, five-fingered hands, now covered in blood and viscera, and saw weapons more terrifying than any energy rifle. In that dead, ringing silence, Thulnara finally found her voice. It was not a flute. It was a dry, broken whisper. What are you?" The news did not spread. It detonated. The security recordings from the Panopticon, released by a panicked Zephyrian government in a desperate bid for transparency, became the single most viewed artifact in galactic history. On trillions of screens across thousands of worlds, the scene played out. They watched the graceful, superior Zephyrians fall into chaos. They watched the mythical Void Stalker emerge, a thing of legend made terrifyingly real. And then they watched the small, soft-skinned primate in the strange blue uniform do the impossible. The galaxy, which had been in a state of carefully maintained, centuries-long political stasis, fractured overnight. On the bridge of the Cathar battlecruiser Worldbreaker, Warlord Grok slammed his colossal, four-fingered fist onto the command throne's armrest, cracking the reinforced alloy. The other hulking, gray-skinned warriors in the chamber flinched, but Grok was not angry. He was ecstatic. His tusks jutted aggressively from his lower jaw as a guttural laugh like an avalanche rumbled from his chest. "Play it again," he roared. The holographic display replayed the final moments of the fight. The human female, broken and bleeding, tearing the life from the stalker. "Glorious," Grok bellowed. "For 500 cycles, the tailies of the Void Stalker have been a stain on our honor. The Zephyrian weaklings captured it with their tricks and traps, but they could not kill it. And this human, she met it with flesh and fury and broke it." He turned to his strategist. "These humans, they sent diplomats. What must their warriors be like?" The strategist, a wizened Cathar with ritual scars across his face, considered this. "Warlord, the Glypton Collective is already calling for a quarantine of their home system. They say such a species cannot be allowed to spread." "Glyptons are fools made of rock and fear," Grok spat. "They see a threat. I see an opportunity. A species with this much primal strength, this much will. They are the first worthy race we have encountered since the Great Expansion. Send an envoy, not to the Zephyrians, directly to the human vessel. Offer them an alliance. Offer them weapons, ships. We will teach them how to wage war on a galactic scale, and they will teach us how to be gods of battle again." Far away in the silent, crystalline halls of the Glypton Collective, a different conversation was taking place. The Glyptons were a silicon-based species, their thoughts processes of pure, cold logic. Their bodies were faceted, crystalline forms that communicated through modulated light patterns. "The data is irrefutable," pulsed the light form designated Prime Analyst 7. The being designated human, Captain Sarah Chen, exhibited a biological stress response that resulted in a strength and durability output exceeding theoretical limits for a carbon-based organism of its mass by a factor of 12. Its tactical improvisation and tolerance for extreme physical trauma are statistical anomalies. Conclusion, flashed the light from Consensus Coordinator 1. The species Homo sapiens represents a biological paradox, Prime Analyst 7 pulsed back. It possesses the sapience and tool-making capacity of a Level 4 civilization, but the inherent predatory aggression and physical resilience of a Death World apex predator. This is an unstable combination. A predator does not negotiate, it dominates. A predator does not form alliances, it expands its territory. Cathar are already seeking to weaponize them, Consensus Coordinator 1 noted, precisely. The introduction of humanity into the galactic ecosystem is an extinction-level variable. Their potential for disruption is absolute. Therefore, the only logical course of action is preemptive containment. I propose the Galactic Council vote to immediately enact Protocol 117, the complete isolation of star system Sol via a stasis field. We cannot allow this predatory anomaly to spread. Meanwhile, on a dozen worlds huddled in the shadow of Cathar space, worlds that had paid tribute in resources and lives to appease their aggressive neighbors, the footage brought not fear or logical analysis, but a terrifying, desperate hope. On the swamp world of Sorrow, the amphibious Saurigen gathered around pirated holographic projectors, their large, empathic eyes wide. They had lived in fear for generations. The recording of the human was like a sacred text. "She did not use a great weapon," whispered the elder speaker, her gills fluttering. "She used her body, her will. The stalker was the symbol of unbreakable violence. And she broke it, our saviors," another chimed in, his voice trembling with emotion. "The universe has sent us saviors. Or a new kind of monster," a younger one countered, but his voice lacked conviction. The elder speaker shook her head. "The Cathar are strong but lack subtlety. The Zephyrians are subtle but lack strength. These humans, they seem to possess both. We must reach out to them, Before the Cathar corrupt them or the Glyptons imprison them, we will offer them fealty. We will offer them everything we have. Anything is better than the fear we live in now. Galactic Council, housed in a grand orbital station that glittered like a jewel over Zephyrus Prime, descended into chaos. The chamber, usually a place of calm, ponderous debate that could last for years, was now a cacophony of shouting, threats, and desperate pleas. Ambassador Thulnara stood at the central podium, her form diminished, her iridescent skin a flat, listless white. She recounted the events, her voice a monotone, a stark contrast to her usual poetic cadence. When she finished, the room exploded. An alliance? Now, roared the Cathar ambassador, his voice booming through the chamber. These humans have proven their mettle. They are the key to galactic security. They are the death of galactic security, retorted the Glypton delegate, its crystalline form flashing an angry, crimson light. They are a plague, a biological weapon wearing a diplomat's uniform. They must be contained for the good of all. A third voice, soft and ethereal, silenced the chamber. It came from the Luminians, beings of pure energy who rarely engaged in physical debates. Their representative, a swirling cloud of incandescent particles, shimmered. You are all thinking in terms of predator and prey, of weapons and cages. You are missing the fundamental truth. We have just witnessed the introduction of a new cosmic principle into our ordered galaxy, the force of embodied will. The human did not kill the stalker with strength alone. She killed it with the absolute, uncompromising belief that she could. This is a power we have not encountered before. It is neither good nor evil, but it will change everything. Back on the Harmony, still in forced quarantine in orbit, the mood was grim. The ship that had arrived as a symbol of peace was now the most feared object in the sector. They were inundated with messages. Declarations of war from minor paranoid systems, offers of alliance from the Cathar, pleas for salvation from a dozen subjugated races, and a cold, formal demand for surrender from the Glypton Collective. Sarah Chen sat in the medbay, her left arm encased in a state-of-the-art Zephyrian biocast that was knitting her bones back together with unnerving speed. The physical pain was gone, replaced by a deep, weary ache in her soul. She wasn't a hero. She was a diplomatic incident of galactic proportions. She had wanted to build a bridge. Instead, she had revealed a chasm. Commander Evans stood by her bedside, holding a data pad. "The Council is deadlocked," he said, his voice heavy. "The factions are forming. The Cathar and their vassals on one side, calling us the Ascendant Warriors. The Glyptons and their logic purity block on the other, calling us the primal threat. The rest of the galaxy is terrified of both sides and scrambling to choose one." "The Zephyrians?" Sarah asked quietly. "They've abstained. They seem to be in a state of civilizational shock. Their entire philosophy has been predicated on the supremacy of intellect over physical force. You didn't just kill the Void Stalker, Sarah. You killed a central pillar of their culture." A soft chime at the door announced a visitor. It was Ambassador Thulnara. She entered the medbay alone, without her usual retinue. She looked older, her tall frame stooped, the light in her skin almost entirely gone. She dismissed Evans with a slight nod, and he reluctantly left them alone. Thulnara stood by the bed, looking down at Sarah not with authority, but with a kind of clinical, fearful curiosity, like a scientist examining a creature she had just discovered could rewrite the laws of physics. "My physicians are astounded by your recovery rate," she began, her voice soft. "Your biology, it actively seeks to repair trauma. It fights. Our bodies have forgotten how to do that. We simply replace what is broken." Sarah said nothing, simply meeting the ambassador's gaze. "I have been reviewing your world's history," Thulnara continued, her black eyes searching Sarah's face. "The data you provided us. At first we saw it as tragic, a long, painful childhood, so much conflict, so much death. We pitied you." She paused. "We were wrong, it was not a childhood, it was a crucible. Your planet Earth, it is a crucible that forges weapons." "We are not weapons, Ambassador," Sarah said, her voice hoarse. "We are survivors. My world is not a peaceful garden, it's a constant struggle. Predator and prey, hot and cold, storm and calm. To live is to fight. To fight the environment, to fight disease, to fight each other, and yes, to fight the things that want to kill you. It's not a philosophy. It's just life. But you built starships," Vulnara whispered, a desperate need for understanding in her voice. You composed music, you pondered the meaning of the universe. How can a being forged in such a savage crucible create such things? Maybe, Sarah said, a profound and terrible realization dawning in her own mind. You can only truly appreciate the beauty of a star when you have spent a lifetime fighting to escape the darkness of the cave. Maybe the drive to create is just the other side of the drive to survive. Maybe they are the same thing. Vulnara stared at her for a long time. The fear in her eyes was slowly replaced by a dawning, horrifying understanding. The Zephyrians had believed themselves to be the pinnacle of evolution, the calm, rational mind of the galaxy. They now faced a species that embodied a terrifying synthesis they had never conceived of. The mind of a philosopher in the body of a killer. A creature that could weep at a symphony in the afternoon and tear apart a monster with its bare hands in the evening. The galaxy has always been balanced between the thinkers and the brutes, Vulnara said, her voice hollow. The Zephyrians and the Cathar, the mind and the fist, we always believed that was the fundamental dichotomy of the universe. She looked at Sarah, at the human who had proven her entire civilization wrong. You are both. You are the thing that comes after, and I do not know if you are the dawn or the dusk. The ambassador turned and left without another word, leaving Sarah alone in the sterile silence of the medbay. The Harmony floated in the void, no longer a ship of peace, but a fulcrum upon which the fate of the galaxy now balanced. Humanity had reached for the stars seeking friendship and knowledge. They had wanted a seat at the table. Instead, in a single, bloody, and desperate act of survival, they had overturned the table and now stood among the pieces, forcing a shocked and terrified galaxy to wonder what kind of new game was about to begin. The future was unwritten, but it would be shaped by the impossible truth now echoing from one end of the cosmos to the other. The most dangerous thing in the galaxy was not the monster, but the one who had killed it.